Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to wrap up this week's theme of Eastern music, a vague description of kind of pushing against the very American and European bands that we tend to look at on this channel. And we're going to wrap it up with some Paledusk, which is a group that I have greatly enjoyed in the past. In the middle of 2022, we checked out a song from them called Slay. That was very fun. I think we've actually had a track or two on live stream as well. They're a very fun, eclectic type of alternative metal, if I remember correctly. We're going to be diving into the song Black Ice today. So let's dive in. See what Paledusk is bringing to the table today. Very wild guitar tones. Yeah, very bouncy. Very wild production on this too. It's a very bright, twinkly synth in the background. I was just about to say that they finally reached a cohesive focus. And back to the chorus. That's fun. The slight tempo drop. Random double time. What a wild ride. Okay. Well, I mean, on the one hand, it's what I expect from Paledusk. It's it's chaotic alternative metal. It is all over the place, and oh man, you know what stands out to me though on here is I vaguely remember Slay having a little bit of pop and hip hop and hardcore all sort of mashed together, and we saw plenty of that here too. But what I think is a cool addition that I don't really remember too much from the last time we checked them out is the inclusion of a strong experimental production style. I think it's what helps all of this stand out a little bit more rather than just being, hey, we made a pop section, hey, we made a metal section, hey, we made a rock section, and we put some, rapped lyrics over it or something like that. And sort of having this disjointed movement, which is vaguely what I remember from Slay. This puts this glossy shine over everything. The transitions are super glitchy. The production values on every section is ridiculously high. There's always some sort of electronic component to all these parts. Regardless of how metallic or poppy they are, there's this electronic component, and it sort of ties everything together in a way that I don't really feel I've heard on previous tracks from them. This is still, to be fair, totally disjointed. But there's a heart, a DNA to all of it that helps tie it together just a little bit better than I recall. And to me, it's what gives them a little bit of that extra oomph, that X factor to stand out in. Well, when did this come out? I think that's going to be interesting. 3 years ago. And to me, it helps them stand out against a rising genre malleability, right? A lot of music these days is about saying, hey, what if we mashed this and this? And we've actually wound up with some really wild, eclectic combinations of sounds in the last, even just 5 years, but honestly, the last decade. And well within the metal realm too, pop has woven its way into the world of metal pretty strongly, and we have some very catchy, high production, especially in the vocals, choruses, and a lot of otherwise heavy metal tracks. And I know, like, the metal hardcore purists aren't too keen about the alternative pop metal stuff coming out these days, but honestly, I mean, that's what music is about right now. It is wild experimentation of just smashing things together. And how do you stand out when everybody is standing out? I think Pale Dusk has kind of locked that down a little bit here with production. It's one thing to write a poppy melody over a metal riff. Well, the first person who does that, now they stand out a little bit, but everyone else, yeah, now it's becoming the norm. It's just how you write a mainstream metal song. So you got to start mixing other things. Like I said, mixing genres has been a thing, but Pale Dusk, they stand out through production. It isn't just that they're smashing all these wild ideas together. It's that when you listen to what's going on in the background, when you listen to how these transitions are formed, when you listen to the plethora of electronic sounds that exist on this track, it honestly at times starts to feel more like an IDM song that happens to have a hardcore alternative metal uh, mask put on top of it just because of all of the attention to detail on transition, on production of sounds, not just production in general, but how does this sound? How should it be formed? How should it mold? How should it grow? It's not so much of, tweaking a bunch of things and saying, "Oh, this tone that I found is pretty great. I'm going to use it." But it's about how should we manipulate this sound over time? How should it take us from one idea to another? Can we invert it? Can we warp it? Can we distort it in any way? And it allows even something as simple as the guitar tone, which is pretty consistent throughout this song, to take on various personalities depending on what the section is. There's at one point that I think the guitar tone, which is already overdriven and compressed, was actually lined up with just white noise. And so when you get these really abrupt staccato guitar hits, you also get a little injection of static under it, and it makes it sound very gnarly. And it's little ideas like that just take this from what's already, I would say, like an 8 or a 9 song and bumps it up to a 9 or a 10 song. It stands out so much because not just what's on paper, but what the engineer has done to embellish and expand upon and put focus onto the musical side of things. And I don't know, to me it just stands out so much. But compositionally, how do I begin talking about this? I honestly don't know, right? We've listened to some prog songs in the past and they'll have 17 sections to them. And I'll be like, okay, I got like a broad strokes idea of what the song was doing. But a lot of that's because even with those older prog epics, there's still some sort of continuity between ideas. Here, there's not. There's very little carryover between any concepts on this. And so it's really difficult to absorb all of this. I basically listened to 8 songs simultaneously in a 4 minute span. I'm not going to remember that. It's not going to happen. And so my understanding of this track really exists in even broader strokes than usual. Um, there's definitely a chaotic element to this song, but I think generally speaking, the song also has highs and lows. There's a nice contrast to it. Volume wise, it's just max volume, the whole thing. But it does have energy contrasts. Some sections are bouncier than others, some are more angsty and aggressive, others are heavier. And I think sort of bouncing between all of these, even I think there was one point where it was just sort of levity. They sort of cut out the low end entirely, and there were some higher ranged, like twinkling sounds. And I think we had the female clean vocals there too. And it was just really focusing on, for like, I don't know, 4 bars. Maybe it wasn't a really long section, but just focusing on a very light, ethereally produced treble area of music. And even that, which volume wise is pretty high, has an intensity dynamic compared to the rest of the song. And it's all of this energy contrast that I think helps the song have any sort of flow or direction to it. Because otherwise, it's just channel surfing. You hit a different style every couple of seconds. But what helps it feel connected in some way, aside from the production, which I do think acts as a strong bit of glue for this song, but it's the general ebb and flow. How some are higher energy and some are lower energy, and the transitions between them. And all of this helps it feel like you're following a thread. That thread is going through multiple dimensions, sure, but you can see the journey of where you've come from. Um, and Yeah, I think that's the best I have on this as far as like an artistic or thematic read. Because otherwise, like I said, it's just chaos. There's no way to know where we're going. There really isn't much of a cohesive story here. It's it's channel surfing in a way that it's fun. And I think that's really the throughput here. If this was more seriously defined, if I couldn't tell that there was an air of lightheartedness to it, and I could have a totally wrong read on that too, but the music feels very casual to me. They're not here trying to tell an epic story with traditional compositional techniques, and trying to be the best of the best of the best in music ever. This song feels fun. It feels light. It feels casual. Um, and so I can kind of take that, and I don't know. It's not like a reduction of my expectations, but it does put me in a different mindset because we listen to some prog epics, right? And some of those are, especially in the world of prog metal, can be very disjointed. And I call it out, right, as a negative. But here it doesn't feel like a negative. I think because it's supposed to be fun, right? There's, like, if you go into a drama, right? Especially a well grounded in our reality drama, your suspension for disbelief is it's pretty fragile, right? If somebody punches someone across the room or something and a super strength kind of feat, you're like, oh, wait a second. I thought this was like a real life story here. But if you're watching a cartoon and it happens, you're just like, yeah, whatever. That's weird. It's not what I was expecting, but I'm cool with it. You just have different expectations for different types of media. And so when it comes to this, my defenses are kind of down a little bit. It starts off fun. It starts off high energy, sure, but low stakes. And so when we have these rapid switches around, yeah, it's disjointed, sure, but it doesn't really bother me as much. I enjoy my time with it. Am I going to listen to this again? I have no idea. I don't think so. It is quite a bit chaotic, and definitely some of the hardcore elements come in, and we get the breakdowns and the heavy sections, and there's a lot of harsh vocal in here that I'm kind of iffy on. It's not something I think I generally would enjoy, but as a one-time listen, I mean, it just put a smile on my face. I just had this goofy thought this whole time. What happens next? What are they going to do next? Where are they going to go next? And you just kind of you go along for the roller coaster of it. I'd be interested though, if anyone's heard this song dozens of times, maybe you have a bit more of a cohesive roadmap to it. Is there anything underneath that I'm missing? Maybe there's a motif that actually shows up more often than I picked up, and that kind of ties things together. Maybe when we hit the lyrics, the channel surfing concept makes sense. But knowing Paledusk and what I've heard in the past, it's just kind of the music they make. I'm not expecting too much thematic cohesion there. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because I know people would be like, dude, this was not cohesive at all. This was disjointed. Why did you enjoy it? I think that's it. It's about expectations. This is just a fun, lighthearted track. And so I'm along for the ride. Whereas if something feels more serious, I'm kind of there for the serious artistic element, which I do want to kind of bring that up for a second. That's not to diminish Pale Dusk and their artistic vision on this. Well, first of all, just looking at the performance side, this requires chops. You got to have multiple vocalists. You got to understand multiple genres. You got to play all those different genres. There isn't any shred in here, but there is quite a bit of good guitar work. There's varied guitar work. You got to have a producer who knows how to enact your vision. In fact, it would not surprise me if one of the members of the band is also the engineer, just because of how deeply incorporated the production side is to the sonic identity of the song. But on the other side of the equation is the freaking drummer, dude. Did you listen to him? Oh my god, that drummer is just bonkers. The patterns, the intensity, the frequency of attacks, there's just so much sound coming out of the drum work. And I actually kind of do want to give it a second listen now that I'm remembering this, just focusing on the drums entirely, because I think they were the most impressive from a technical perspective instrument on this track. And they're just relentless too. Just the endurance, the precision, all of it. The performance of it is just fantastic. Um, yeah, let me hit some lyrics on this. See what's going on with Pale Dusk's Black Ice. I'm not going to say I have a full grasp on this, but it's certainly about a person who is not in a great state of mind. That recently things have kind of brought them down. And there's even a point, which I think is the chorus. It says, "Black ice, I'm standing on the edge. Black ice, you're just watching me now. Deep down, I want to live in the same world." This idea of being at the edge and possibly being ready to jump. There is, at least to me, an allusion to suicide here. We also have, just before this, says, "Break it. My heart is crying, it's screaming, it's melting." And there's also one stanza in here that says, "Today is the last day," which again kind of has more of these suicide implications to it. And it seems that all of this is either referring to this person being black ice or black ice being in their life. They describe black ice at the very beginning of the song as dark, cold, and painful, dangerous, cold, and lonely, sharp, cold, and brutal. It's too harsh to touch. And it could be that this is a dangerous part of them, something that is sitting on their periphery and makes their life more difficult or painful or cold. But it could also be a representation of themselves, that they are cold and painful and lonely, that nobody can get close to them, that if they do, they get injured from being too close to this person. And through all of this, whether it is the black ice making their life terrible, or that they are black ice and no one can touch them, no one can get close enough to them to help them, that their life isn't doing so well. There's even one point where he says something along the lines of, "I don't want much, but I'd like to have something." Yeah, here it is. He says, "I don't really want any piece of shit, but I don't want to have nothing either." So, you know, it's this idea that if I could just have something worth owning, some part of my life that I think is worth having, this could all be different. But right now I have nothing, and all that's afforded me is worthless. They feel like there's no way to get out of it, is what I gather from that. But what I find interesting, and why I say that I don't have a full grasp on this, is the very end of the song. We have an inversion of the chorus. Instead of "I'm standing on the edge," and "you're watching me," says "you're standing on the edge and I started running to you." And I don't know if this is supposed to show some sort of inversion of perception, that this person being so alone, or maybe it's their idea that they are alone, that no one can get close to them, when actually people are getting close to them. They're just not recognizing it until it's too late. But it could also be that they're black ice. You touch them, and you're going to get hurt for it. And now this other person's on the edge because of our narrator. So, like I said, I don't know exactly how I want to read into that. But they do have that inversion in the final chorus at the end of the song. What I find most interesting here is that, like I said, Paledusk, I feel like they just make this kind of music, but the lyrics are rather cohesive. Everything bleeds into one another. Everything makes sense in context with every other stanza. It is lengthy. There's probably a good 15 stanzas here, and a lot of it feels rather linear. The choruses come back every 4 or 5 stanzas. There's a lot of lyrics, but it all feels connected. It feels like an evolution or a growth of an idea. Very different from the music, which is scattershot, which is just wherever the mind goes next, we're just going to go there. Stream of consciousness, I'd say, would be what the music feels like. Very different vibe than the lyrics. But also the idea that the music goes into these bouncier, poppier bits. That's, I think, is when the lyrics are saying, "I'm standing on the edge and you're watching me." This feels to be the person at their lowest, and the music is their bounciest, their poppiest, their brightest. I don't know. It's interesting. I would love to watch this with English lyrics, to kind of see where all this, not with English lyrics, but with English subtitles, to see where these different ideas pop up in the music. Because to me, it feels kind of backwards in some cases. But again, maybe that's their intention. Maybe there's some duality to that. Maybe they're trying to explore an artistic concept through these opposing sides. I don't know. These are my thoughts. Paledusk's Black Ice. What did you think of this song? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you would like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Maybe you have your own interpretation or opinion on this track. Please put all of those thoughts and anything else you would like to add in the comment section down below. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. All right, that wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC? Is that, why does that feel weird? The rhythm got thrown off. Yeah, I guess it's just 10 p.m. UTC. Anyways, we're going to be checking out an album. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head, but you can find it in that Linktree link. I have the schedule in there. You can always see what's coming up. We'll do an album tomorrow, though. We have the live stream on Sunday, and then we'll be back Monday for a special week's theme. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, with the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.